Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soldiers of Cinema podcast. As always, I'm Clark Coffey, and with me, as always as well, I'm always Clark. I don't change, and he's always Cullen. He doesn't change either, and we're, as always, here together.
Yes, I'm forever in the guest seat. It would be kind of funny if you did that. If every episode you introduce, you're like, and our guest this week is
Our guest this week, and our
filmmaker.
guest this week. Well,
Our
now,
esteemed guest, friend of the show.
We just need to do it. We don't need to like tell people that we're thinking about doing it,
True.
and then like don't do it. We'll just, you know what we'll do? We'll tell our audience all the things that we could do, but we won't actually do them. Like we'll just,
so it's
you know
a
what I
big
mean?
surprise when it happens.
It's like instead of telling the joke, we will like explain the joke as if we like, you know, we would have told it, right? So I like that though.
I do too.
And with me, for the 79th time, our guest,
It's got a very
Colin
special guest, surprise
a
guest.
very special guest. No, actually, we do have.
We do indeed.
We
Yes.
do have a special guest for this episode, and this is a real treat for me, because we have Chloe Leis, who is first of all, she's my niece, and she's studying film, studying cinematography at Chapman University, which happens to be not too far away from me. And she just recently worked on her first like real feature film, Mario Van Peebles' Outlaw Posse, which hit theaters just a little while ago, I think in the beginning of March. And I thought this would be a treat because, you know, especially for people out there who are maybe aspiring filmmakers, I thought that it would be very interesting to talk to somebody who's just gone through film school and has just worked on their first major feature film. Um, and she could kind of talk about her experience, having just gone through that process. And it's an exciting time for her. She's graduating, and it's kind of fun for me to like, you know, to think back to having all of this potential of like just starting your career. So yeah, we just talked to her about her influences and inspirations, her experiences in film school, and what it was like to work with Mario Van Peebles on Outlaw Posse. So sit back and enjoy this conversation, everyone. Well, Chloe, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy, hectic schedule as a senior in college about to graduate. We're really happy to have you here. You know, a good chunk of our listeners are aspiring filmmakers. And there's, you know, not everybody, but there's like a good percentage of people who are aspiring filmmakers. And I thought it was such an interesting time in your career, and I wanted to talk to you about it. You've been studying filmmaking at Chapman University here in Orange County. And so we wanted to ask you a little bit about your experience there. But then, and you're getting ready to graduate in just a couple months, which is amazing. But you've also got to work a little while ago, I think now, but the film was just released in theaters. But your first feature film experience was not too long ago, and you and I went to the theater and got to watch it together in Long Beach, which I thought was like so exciting and fun to see your name up there in the big screens at the credits roll. But you got to work on Outlaw Posse, which was directed by Mario Van Peebles. That's extremely exciting, and there's a really cool cast that you got to work with there. But we're going to get to that. But one of the things that we always kind of, I'm always interested in is kind of your story about what got you into film in the first place. Like, and it's especially interesting to me to ask younger people this question, because I feel like now there's so many other options, right? There's like, I mean, video games, like you've grown up like with video games being a huge thing. There's like social media. There's so many outlets for your time that didn't exist when I was a kid. And so it's always interesting to me that like, and I'm super excited that younger people are still interested in cinema. Okay, but I've talked way enough. Like, tell us your story about like how, why you wanted to do this in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, It's been a long journey.
Yeah.
I got involved in film when I was 4, so,
Okay.
most of my life.
Yeah.
I actually started film acting, believe it or not. At a very young age, I was super engaged by the cinema and movies, and I was always watching movies even as a very young toddler. And I would put on little productions, little reenactments of movie scenes, my favorite movie scenes as a kid.
Yeah.
And so my parents recognized that and were, wanting to foster that interest.
Yeah.
And so they got me an agent, and I started doing some minor child acting, nothing major. I was in a couple independent short films, a couple commercials, very minimal.
Yeah.
Um,
But a fun exposure, though, right?
yeah,
You
and
kind of got to see how that world kind of was at a young age. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So it was like getting involved in that, and I always had that be my goals. I know I'm going to work in the film industry. I know I'm going to
Mm.
work in the film industry. And for most of my life, that was I know I'm going to be a film actor. And then late middle school, kind of early high school, I got access to a DSLR camera,
Mm.
and that's when the actual production side really caught my eye and my interest,
Yeah.
because I started doing photography, and I realized you can make images of the real world and create this capture this moment, that's so beautiful, and you can take people's breath away with just an image. And furthermore, you can then do that with moving pictures as well. And you can take lots of pictures in a row, lots of frames, and then
Yeah.
create, capture a moment in time that's longer than just a fraction of a second, and take people's breath away with that. And I was so intrigued and fascinated by that world, and all of my love for film and everything like that went, oh, maybe I don't have to get in front of the camera. Maybe I can be behind it, and I can be the one making the beautiful images and showcasing stories visually. And that's kind of where I started going then in high school, was, really focusing on the film production side and camera and cinematography and editing. And I would make little videos with my friends, or I'd make promo videos with, with other companies and people that I knew who had small businesses. Just a lot of outreach like that, that was, able to let me experiment in that world. And so when it came to college, I never had plans to go to college. I'm a first generation college student. I was like, film acting, I can just kind of learn. People
Yeah.
always talk about you don't need to go to college for film.
Uh-huh.
And that was kind of my initial plan. I started getting a secondary side interest in computer science. And for that, I did want to go to college, because that does need a degree. And if I go into computer science, and it's good to have an actual educational,
Yeah.
higher education background in that. And because of that second interest, my film side went, oh, I should look at film colleges that also have computer science.
Ah.
And so that's why I decided I'm going to Chapman University, and not, just a primary, just film school. I
Yeah.
wanted to have a well-rounded education experience. And Chapman really stood out because they have such an innovative and very well-known and extremely rigorous film school. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't just be, hey, you have a school that has like a little film studies minor over here in the College of Arts or whatever. It's an
Right.
actual film school,
Yeah.
And
They've got some great facilities, and I mean,
yeah.
really amazing, because I've visited you on set a couple times, and we'll get to that. But yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff there.
Yeah, they have a lot of really cool things. We have a small volume stage, a bunch of sound stages, a huge scene shop, everything you could possibly need. They do an amazing job of reaching out to people who are really making it in the industry. Most of the time, people who go to the Oscars, all of the Oscar nominees and stuff like that. So this year we had a lot of people who were nominated for the Oscars, or even won Oscars, had already visited our school. So it was like really
Very cool.
to then watch the Oscars and be like, oh my gosh, we got to hear from all those people personally in our theater. I got to shake their hand,
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's inspiring. Yeah.
It's an incredible experience, and they do a great job of that. So yeah, I applied to Chapman, got in. Crazy. It's such a hard school to get in. So I'm very blessed that I was able to be accepted, and that's when I really started my cinematography journey.
Yeah.
So Yeah,
Now,
then that's
so
what I am now.
well, okay, a couple questions like popped to mind. I'm interested in this because acting was kind of my first kind of foray into this world as well, much later in life than you started in, much later in life. But I'm kind of curious, like, do you have kind of an idea about like what kind of initiated or catalyzed that shift where at first you were like, hey, I want to be in front of the camera, I want to be a performer, to to kind of, because it's a big shift, right? And then
Yeah.
actually, you know what, like I'm really interested in maybe spending more time behind the camera. Do you have kind of an idea or articulation of what changed there for you?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question because I still have a love for acting. I'll still
Hmm.
like, act occasionally in films. I've acted in a couple short films at my school in the past couple years, just when it comes up, and I still love performing. I did theater for many years as well outside of my film stuff, and so I still love acting. I just think that I realized when I got that camera and when I was able to create those images and capture these beautiful moments, capture a sunset, and look at how the light is playing on someone through the leaves, and go, "Wow, that's so pretty. I need to remember that, and I need to see it, and be the one who's able to say, hey, that that thing that's never gonna go away now because I was the one who hit record."
Mm.
Um, I think that intrigued me so much. And my logical brain, I've always had a very logical brain. Like I said, I'm very interested in computer science as well, and mathematics, and the STEM fields, just more of
Mm.
as a hobby, which I feel like is usually the opposite. Film and STEM. If you have a hobby, it should be the film, not the STEM.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I like to stand out. What can I say?
There you go.
Yeah. So I think for me, like having that logical brain, loving that creative problem solving, I didn't want to just stand in front of a camera and say lines all the time. And that I needed to like exercise that need of like creative problem solving, figuring out how to make this image work, or how to set this camera up so that it'll be the best thing it could possibly be. I love challenging myself. I've always loved education and tests and exams, and it's just like how I'm built. And
Yeah,
so when
yeah.
I got that opportunity with the camera, I went, oh, I can still be involved with film and filmmaking and be on set in the action there, right next to the actor. But I don't necessarily need to be the one there standing and reading and
Yeah.
saying lines. I can be the one that's trying to do all the creative problem solving and make it the best thing it could possibly be at any given moment.
So it just engaged even more of the things that you were interested in, it sounds like. It was like the perfect mixture of like all these different things that are interesting and exciting for you. Yeah, that's fantastic. It's interesting as I think about this, and Cullen, I'm curious about your thoughts too. So Cullen is I mean, he's like one of my go-to guys for technical cinematographer stuff. I mean, it's like he creates his own LUTs. He's like developed like amazing film grain emulation. It's like he's really smart technical guy and a really great cinematographer. And so, yeah, so he's like, I'm nowhere near as like up on this kind of stuff as Cullen is. But one of the things that I'm interested about is I think of, you were saying that your first camera was a DSLR, right? And so I'm guessing it was like a full frame Canon, something ish, right? You had access to 24 frames per second. You had access to like shallow depth of focus, like right off the bat. And, it's interesting to me to think about how that might, the tools that were available to younger generation, what kind of influence that might have. Because when I was a kid, I also had access to cameras, but I had access to, VHS, video cameras where, you're not getting any, I mean, it was impossible to get any kind of, cinematic look, so we would
Right.
still play around and have fun with it. But it's like, nowhere near the kind of technical, we couldn't emulate what I was seeing in the theater, even remotely. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until so much later in my life that a consumer, like an average person, could have access to a camera that could even come close to mimicking a cinematic look.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you got to do that like right off the bat. That's so interesting.
Well, yes and no. So,
Okay, okay.
I'm gonna back up a little bit because I guess if you count, my first camera was like I couldn't even tell you the brand of it
Hmm.
because I don't remember what it was. it was like a GoPro type of camera, so it had a waterproof casing. Like that was the goal of it, was to be kind of an action camera. I think I got it for my birthday one year.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't even have a screen, no viewfinder, no monitor, no.
So you're shooting blind.
It had one button, that was the record button.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. And they
it's like the version of like a pinhole camera.
And that was like all you got. Yeah. So I guess in a way I didn't. The Canon wasn't my first like camera of anything. It was the first camera that I was able to then use cinematic techniques and like learn that from. I'd been making iMovie trailers on my iPad from when I was young, and I'd been using my little hand. It was tiny. Like I could hold it in my hand and just flip the switch and it would record, and I don't know what it would record because you can't see anything. It's, like it's like film.
So you gotta wait for it to be developed.
Yeah, no, legitimately, that's what it was, and it was worse because there wasn't even a viewfinder. So it was like I would put it up to my eye and use it almost like like a pistol or something, where you're like, okay, I think I'm aiming it in the right place. I'm just kind of looking where it's aiming, and I wasn't making cinematic videos at that point. I was just documenting my life. That was me being like, oh, we're going to Cancun. I'm gonna bring along my video camera so I can record our diving experience underwater, and then I would take it out of its casing and then record the iguanas or something like that. Sure. So my introduction to video wasn't necessarily the DSLR, but my introduction to cinema was the DSLR.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
And a good distinction. Yeah. I mean, Cullen actually, you're working, I don't know if you've completed editing and everything, but you're working on a film, right? Where you use like a GoPro type camera.
Yeah. My second feature, which is I've just finished the first cut of it, and that basically decided to challenge myself by shooting it all on an action cam. And it's interesting because I find things like that, like you kind of build up this, especially when you are doing it all yourself, there's this kind of constant desire to, okay, I want a big cinema camera with like a cinema zoom and all these, gadgets on it, and a viewfinder and like electronic video transmitter so I can look at the image on my iPad or something like that.
Your rig ends up just looking insane. There's
a matte box and it's got 3 filters in it and all that. And I think that the fascinating thing about that to me is that I'm not disparaging that at all, because that is still very much what I do. But I think that sometimes you kind of get lost in that. And one of the funnest things that I did was just to strip all that back and go back to a point where it's like, I can't zoom on this camera, I can't control focus, I can barely even control exposure, and to really simplify it like that was a very neat experience. So I think that to come from that is also, I think, very foundational, because it's like you're just learning about the most basic kind of like the camera is an extension of me in a very, very rudimentary way, as opposed to having to worry about, focus and exposure and all that. But I think it's interesting too, because I sort of had a very similar up and coming experience as well, where I was about probably the same age you described, where I was probably 4 or 5 when I had an old Sony Hi8 like tape camera, and so all the editing was done in camera and all that, and and then just growing up and getting your first camera where you can actually change a lens and you can figure out what focal length means and all that sort of thing was really foundational. So I can totally relate to what you're saying about like this idea that you're not really making like cinema at a young age. You're kind of just learning about like visual storytelling and how to very rudimentarily edit, and then suddenly you're able to make a lot more choices with how you're presenting an image and how you're capturing an image, and it becomes a lot more kind of second nature to think, okay, what focal length am I going to shoot on, and all that sort of thing. So very fascinating that it sounds very similar to kind of how I came up as well.
Yeah, I love what you said about the camera being an extension of you, because with my little camera, it's literally what I had. I had to hold it up to my eye and just point it under my eye where I think it was going, just looking over the top of the lens, because there was no viewfinder. So it literally was an extension of my eye, because there was nothing else I could do. Yeah, I know that's so true. And even the rudimentary editing, gosh, I started in Windows Movie Maker. Woo!
I wonder if they make that anymore. I'm not sure.
I don't even know.
I
I
doubt
don't
it.
even think it exists. I doubt it does. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
My
that's
goodness.
really cool. I'd like tempted to. I mean, this is not about me, but I'll just share. Since you've both gotten to share your like first, like camera
Yeah.
stories. The first camera I didn't actually get to use it, but and this is kind of funny because I finally found a way to digitize the footage so that I could see it. But when I was 2 years old, my father got a camcorder, and it was, this is pre VHS, this is pre beta. It was a medium type called V Cord,
Hmm.
which were almost 8-track tapes that were designed to record video. And the camera also had no viewfinder. And so, and it had to be tethered to your television with a wire, the cable. So my first experience with a camera was my dad filming me, and then me getting to see myself. It would put the image live on your television. So I would see myself on television, and I have this footage of myself just going crazy because I was on TV. And so it was like, I like dancing around and go anyway. So that's my first. So
Well,
my
I also
first,
think it.
I was a performer at 2 years of age. I was on TV. So
Well, I was gonna say that like it's interesting that again you both kind of talked about this like the acting side of it, and I did the same sort of thing too, where I always wanted to be sort of like the director and be behind the camera and stuff like that. But I did a lot of acting as a kid, and right up until high school, I was in a theater program in high school and all that. And I think my thing that kind of made me want to get out of that was I would be after graduating high school, I would go and act in some short film or something like that. And I could not stand not being able to make decisions about like how the thing was being shot. Like
I
I'd
want to be in
and,
control.
And yeah, and like I'd like look at the way, and obviously I would never have like said anything. I'm not gonna be that person that's sitting there and being like, I think you should do it like this. But just sitting there and watching how someone's framing a shot and being like, oh my god, I just want to like grab that and move it around. And it is an interesting kind of like. Same kind of thing though, where it's like I still do like performance. I still like that side of it, but I think my intuitions lied a lot more in the behind the camera stuff.
I think it seems pretty common from like people that I've spoken to, because when we're younger, I mean, if you're watching television or you're watching a movie, I mean, the actors are obviously, I mean, it's the people that you most immediately recognize as being a part of this process, right? It's you don't have an intuition when you're 2-3 years old that there's a director and there's a cinematographer and there's it takes hundreds or sometimes thousands of people to put together a film. It's not until much later. So I think it's pretty common that we kind of gravitate to acting first, but then maybe you move on to something else. So Chloe, we'll get back to your timeline. So you're interested in cinema very early age. You decide to go to Chapman. I'm curious about your experience there, and maybe specifically if there are any kind of surprises. Maybe, I mean, were there any kind of like moments where you questioned if this was a fit, or maybe it was just a solid like, oh my gosh, there's 100% I want to be a cinematographer. There's no question. Or just, I didn't go to film school. Cullen, you didn't go to film school. And so we don't have that experience. So I'm just kind of curious about what yours was like and what you felt about it.
Yeah, I definitely had my ups and downs. Obviously, the hardest part was that I couldn't be on set freshman year because we were all in lockdown. So that's one of the big things, is that I had a little bit of a late
super
start.
Tough.
I had a little bit of late start to actually getting on sets and getting hands-on with the equipment, which Chapman's very known for doing that immediately. Yeah. But nevertheless, I pushed through and I learned everything I could online before I actually got there. And I think that that held me back a little bit, but not that much, because I was able to dive into the philosophy and the idea of filmmaking and stuff before I got into the actual like hands-on part. So that was the first hurdle.
Yeah, a big
one.
Yeah.
But end of freshman year, for like the last 2 months, I was able to go in person, and I was taking cinematography, the first cinematography class at that time. And so I was able to learn how a dolly works. I was able to set up a cinema camera for the first time. And this was with my professor, Kurt Soderling, who we'll mention later. He was ended up being the DP of Outlaw Posse. And he was able to kind of introduce me to all of these things. We learned how to move a fish or dolly around. We learned how to hook up a camera. We learned how to change lenses and all the basic stuff that you get around to.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, there's so much to this that I had no idea. My DSLR only has so much. Like it's got, you can change the lens. Yeah.
That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. You can add a microphone on top. Like there's that, I guess. But it's like, yeah, all these things that I didn't even know existed. And it was hard. There were times where I thought, oh, maybe this isn't for me. Not because I doubted myself in terms of like not being able to do it, but because everyone else in my classes had film experience and like being in a crew, being on set in some capacity, whether it was, their high school had a film program where they made videos and they were in a crew of 5 people or something, or whether their parents were, big in the industry, which happens a lot at Chapman.
Yeah.
And they'd been like, oh yeah, my dad took me onto his commercial sets from when I was a young age. It's like, okay, well, I didn't have, I was homeschooled for most of my life, and the high school that I did go to was a very small school. We didn't have a video program. My only film experience up to that point had been acting in those short films when I was really younger, and then kind of filming stuff with my DSLR, like absolutely no other crew. It was just me, out in the woods with the camera or something like that. So when I got into Chapman, when I started talking to other people and meeting other, students, they'd already had an experience on a team. That was the biggest thing, was they've been like, oh yeah, I've already been a part of a crew. I've had a director. I've had a AD or whatever. And I'd never been like, I'd always been a one-woman show. And so I think that was the biggest moment of like, oh, am I going to be able to like am I going to be able to kind of learn how this process works of being in a big team? Because I was so used to being, like you said, in control of everything. And that was one of the other things with acting, is the same thing, is I would sit behind the camera, and if someone didn't set something up properly, I'd be like, oh, I just want to go help you. Like, or like, that's not the way to do it, but you can't say anything as an actor. And so it was that kind of like, oh, am I going to be able to sit back and focus on just cinematography or just lighting or anything that was like, just sound? Am I able to sit back and do that in a big crew? And I didn't know. And so it took a few sets for me to kind of learn and realize that. And student filmmaking is different because, you kind of have to play multiple roles. You don't have as many, you don't have a big crew. You're not using a large amount of people. Departments kind of bleed together, or you bleed together in your own department. Cinematography will have you'll have your first AC, you'll have your key grip, you'll have your gaffer, but they kind of all help each other when it comes to it. But that was kind of the main hurdle. And once I figured out, oh, I can do this, once I started getting on sets and figuring out, wow, this is how it works, the call sheet goes out, then we all get there and all this, once actually I'd figured out how real,
because there's a whole process. It's a whole very specific process, and there's like the specific hierarchy, and especially, and we'll talk about it when you get on a set, especially a union set, then there's, the very like specific, like quote unquote rules about what you're doing or what you're not doing,
who eats first.
It can be, it's just a whole, it's a whole thing. But that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, Chloe, because you're right. Chapman being out here in Southern California, there probably would be a lot of students who had some kind of experience on set at some point, and you having moved from from Oregon, and not having those opportunities, that would be, kind of a big difference. It's kind of be intimidating. It's like, I remember, the first time I was on a set, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is everybody doing? What's going on? It can really be intimidating. Yeah. That experience is that's one of the biggest things probably a film school education can bring you, is just all that experience. Wow. So okay, so we fast forward to this year. Now I know you've been working on your senior thesis. I don't know if they call it that, but you have two films, right? That you're working on, and you're DP on both of those films. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you did. So yeah, so you decided, obviously, like through your whole schooling, you didn't change your mind. You weren't like, no, I don't want to, I don't want to DP. I want to do sound or anything. So it sounds like you like locked in. Tell us a little bit about your experience on your thesis films, because I've gotten to visit you a time or two on set, and I was so impressed with just the scope of everything is like so impressive. I know you get to work with amazing equipment. That's got to be fun for you. But I mean, how do you feel like you're getting ready to graduate? Do you tell us a little bit about your two thesis films and what that process has been like?
Yeah, so I mean, so Chapman's kind of interesting. We first off, I'll mention that the film production major has 5 emphases. So you can either go into directing, cinematography, editing, sound, or production design. And so even though I came in as a film production major, by the end of sophomore year, I had to make that decision of which one I'm going to go into,
Okay,
and I
yeah, yeah.
still stuck to cinematography.
All right.
That was kind of the one I was leaning toward, and that's the one I stuck to. So you're so right. That being said, everyone in that major has to work on a thesis film. The directors get their thesis film. That's like they get to choose one. And then everyone else kind of fills in depending on how many directors we have. We had 50 directors this year and 20 cinematographers. And
that sounds about right. Everybody wants to be a director.
Everyone wants to be a director. And so that was kind of one of the reasons I had to do two. I am sure that people do two a lot, but I don't know. So yeah, for this year at least, for the year that I'm graduating in, I had to do two senior thesis films. They were both very different, which was super interesting. The first one I shot in fall semester, and we shot on a soundstage for most of it. We had the Ari Alexa Classic, which I requested because I love Ari, however you want to say it. And some amazing Cook Speed Panchros that were just gorgeous lenses to work with. And so yeah, we were shooting on the stage for most of the time. We had a stage build. At Chapman we have 6 or 7 sound stages, all of varying sizes. But yeah, we have an amazing opportunity to actually do that and have a stage build and work in a controlled environment like that, which is awesome. And then my second thesis, which I just wrapped up on.
Oh, congrats.
2 weeks ago now. Yeah. Which is crazy. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. It's like, so everything's moving so fast. Yeah, so that was all shot on locations, both in LA and Long Beach and other areas. And so that was a very different experience. We were working with the Red Raptor. I had the Canon Lumiere lenses for that one. And another Fisher Dolly. We had the smaller with the 11 for that one, which we could only use in so many locations because locations are tricky and how you're going to load in everything and are there stairs, all this stuff. So that was a more challenging situation just because of the scope and the areas, but they both had their own challenges and they both had their own their own ups and downs, and it was amazing to work on those and actually be able to be in that DP position for it's 2 weekends, so it's a 6 days of shooting, and to have that months of pre-production and how that works working with a team going into it, and then actually filming it, and then having the post-production afterward. And I'm coloring both of my films. I'm actually also doing some VFX on the first one, very minor, but just some VFX. And it was wild to have that big scope and be able to have an actual cine crew that had, a first and a second AC, and we had, a key grip, and we had a gaffer, and we had a BBE and BBG, and like all these different positions, and have those all be filled out in full scope, and be able to be the one in charge of that team and work just with the director and just focus on everything while they're getting everything ready, and then be able to go and get ready for the shot. It's like that experience I was working up to it the whole time in my college career. And so their thesis is when you finally get to shine and really show that. And you do some minor films where you get to, quote unquote DP. It's not like the first time you've ever DP'd is your thesis, but it's the first time that you really get to DP on a project that is a big scope that you are in charge for multiple weeks type of thing. And it's scary, and we have to rent equipment outside of Chapman. Chapman has a lot of amazing equipment. They provide our entire camera package. They provide our Fisher Dollies, all the lenses, stuff like that. but all of our G&E stuff we have to go and rent, and they give us money for that we get grants for that. But it's still like that process of like trying to go to rental houses and picking which one you want to go to, and going and picking up all the equipment, loading it into a truck, and how much do you need, and what lights are you picking. And that was an amazing experience. It's scary, it's terrifying.
Yeah,
for someone to be like, hey, I'm gonna go to this big rental house in Hollywood and take some of their equipment for my student film, and they're gonna entrust me with that, and I have to do all the paperwork and the COIs, and it's like but it's a great learning experience. And then you start to get that repertoire with those rental houses as a student, and they give you discounts, and they're very friendly, and they're super excited to work with you. And so it kind of, if I hadn't had that experience and I had to graduate and then rent everything, for my films, I would be terrified. I wouldn't know where to begin. So I'm really glad that Chapman kind of makes us go out and start to dip our toes in the water and see how rental houses and how those relationships work in the industry, because it really that's like, in terms of equipment, that's where everything lies. It's your relationships with the people who have the equipment.
Right. And relationships will prove to be, it's across the board, as you move from school into your career. That they'll be so important in every area. But,
and it's like, it's crazy how much of a difference a positive experience in that kind of world makes versus a negative one. Like when I was like 17, 18, I met, people from Panavision and IMAX and Airy up here in Canada or Toronto. And just the fact that those experiences were positive, that people were nice and they were helpful and they were like willing to, talk to somebody at that age, and kind of, those are relationships that I still have to this day, and still talk to those people and will still go to them. Versus, when you have one like I'm not going to mention the companies, but I've had experiences of the complete opposite level, where it's like you go and you try to make a connection and they just completely brush you off. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that again. So it is interesting how,
which
absolutely.
Will also happen.
Yeah. And so it's interesting how much, I've found that just like a personable experience can really shift things, regardless of the what it is you're getting and the actual technical stuff. It's just, so much of it is about personality and those experiences.
That sounds really wonderful, Chloe. It sounds like that was such a great experience. And I think until you actually are working on a film with a full crew or near full crew, especially on location, you just see that it's all about, there's just it's almost impossible to explain to someone like the magnitude of problem solving that like has to go every single moment, right? It's just, everything is always a compromise. You never have enough time. You never have exactly the right equipment. You never have the exact right light. Actors are, there are so many variables that it's wild how much really filmmaking just boils down to creative problem solving. It's just, that's really what it is. And to have those tools to be able, I think, and it sounds like to me too, it's the confidence that brought you, having those experiences and like, hey, I did this, like I could do it, like I pulled it off, that's hugely powerful. I'm curious about, so let's move to your experience on Outlaw Posse. Now I know that was a while ago, right? So we're kind of going back a little bit in time, but especially in light of the films that you've gotten to work on now as a senior at Chapman, I'm curious, well, let's first, I'm going to hold on that question. Let's talk about Outlaw Posse. So tell me about how you came to know about this film and the production, and how, like, just, when you got to go, where you guys shot, because it sounds like it was extremely exciting.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. One of the coolest things I've ever done, and it's something that I talk about all the time, because if I talk about film in any capacity, it's like, oh yeah, well, back on this movie that I worked on, I had this experience. It's like always coming up in some way.
Right.
So yeah, Outlaw Posse was, I'll start a little bit further back. I think it was like spring of 2022. My professor, Kurt Soderling, who was my professor in freshman year, he'd moved on. He wasn't teaching, so he was around, and he connected with me at one point, and we met up somewhere, and he was kind of like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna be working on this Western, I think, depending on what it is, like, I'd totally love to have you visit set. Like, that was how it was kind of laid out to me. It was, if you want to visit a big set, like, I'm working on this Western, visit this big set. I'm a big Western fan, and so I was like, oh my gosh, that's like one of my bucket lists is to work on a Western. Imagine if I did that right out of the gate. So it gets to like fall, like early September of 2022, and I'm kind of been keeping in the loop with them, like, hey, is that happening? Like, when is that happening? Type of stuff. And I finally call him, and he's just like, hey, we're shooting end of September. We're in Montana. You're welcome to come up and work on it if you want. And I go, wow, that's so
work
amazing.
On it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll work on it. Like, be a part of it. Yes, for sure. Like, I was, in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm going to go up and like be there for like a week and get this experience. This would be great. And he goes, yeah, Leon, I just need to know, like, are you in? Are you out? And all this stuff. And I kind of mentioned, like, yeah, like, what week, what day, whatever would be good for me to visit. And he goes, oh, no, I think you'd need to be there for the whole show, because I can't convince them to hire someone and fly them up from LA and, board them up here in Montana, if they're not there for the whole show. And I went,
whoa.
I mean, sure, I'll make it work. Like, you're asking me to come work on a film with you for the entire duration of the show in Montana with all these big names. Like, of course, I remember actually, it was interesting because I had to sit there and think, like, oh, I have this happening, and I have this happening, I work, I have all these things that I'm gonna have to figure out. And I called my dad, and I was actually house sitting for you, Clark, at the time. So I was in your living room when I made the decision.
Yay!
I was in your living room
so
when
great.
I made the decision to work on Outlaw Posse. And I called my dad, and I was like, Dad, I got this thing and I can do it, but like, there's so many other things I'm going to take care of back here in LA and school. I'm right in the middle of everything. It's in the middle of the semester. And my dad was just like, you have to go. You can't say no to this. Like, you have to go. Everything else will be fine. You're going to regret it later on in life if you don't have this experience. And I was like, you're so right. I'm panicking over nothing. Like, school will be fine. My job will be fine. Everything can wait. Everything can be on hold back here because this opportunity is too good.
Yeah.
And so I did. So I told Kurt, I said, hey, I called him up and I was like, I'm in. Like, let me know when, let me know where, what I need to do. So I got in touch with the production manager and all this stuff. And we coordinated everything. And I had a shoot at the end of September that was a weekend, like, that they had started shooting. And so I came in a couple of days late, which I'll never forgive myself for, because that's the first day that they shot was when Whoopi Goldberg was there. And no one told me that.
And you missed her.
And no one told me that. And so I show up like I think I showed up on day 3 of Outlaw Posse, and everyone was like, oh yeah, we had Whoopi, it was great. And I'm like, what? What? What do you mean? I would have canceled. I would have done other things if I would have known. I would have been here day 1, but nevertheless, I got to see and meet so many amazing people. I mean, we had, people like John Carroll Lynch. We had, Edward James Olmos, Cedric the Entertainer, Willem Maypother, like all these amazing names, many more that I'm not even, getting around to, because it's a huge, amazing cast. That I did get to actually, meet and spend time with and interview and stuff like that. But I was hired on originally. Kurt offered me to work on he was like, oh, you could be on, the grip, you could be on the grip team or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was oh, well, we need someone to do like BTS and EPK, like electronic press kit stuff, and interviews with the actors and being kind of their own little unit of being able to film stuff. You could do that. And I was like, that would be great. Then I could actually have a camera and do my own little thing and meet with actors and have more interfacing and networking instead of just carrying equipment around. So that's what I got hired on to do. Was officially I'm the behind the scenes and EPK photographer person.
Okay.
That's what I'm credited as, stuff like that. I get there, my first day, for my day 1. And Kurt's like, yeah, well, here's everything. I'm just going to have you hang around with the camera team. They'll teach you stuff. And, I'm going to go do this thing. I'm like, great. Sounds good. From that point on, I pretty much was part of camera team. I was pretty much acting as, kind of film loader, digital utility, camera PA sort of position from that day on. And I would go do my BTS and my EPK stuff. But the majority of the show, the majority of the days, I was running batteries and cleaning the truck and helping, slate if it came to it, because we were running 4 cameras.
Yeah, so this is what's wild. So I want to pause just for a second. So this was super fun. So Chloe invited me to a screening out in Long Beach, and we went, and it was an awkward time. It was something like 9 p.m. on like what, a Tuesday or a Thursday or something. So it was like an awkward time. So we go, and it was Chloe and myself, and Chloe had invited a few other of her friends. And we thought we were the only people in the theater, right? And so through the whole movie, Chloe's like giving running commentary. She's like, "Oh yeah, see here, can you believe they had 4 cameras set up?" I mean, so she's just, it's great. It's like I had a live like DVD commentary going on, right? And so I mean, we weren't obnoxious, but it was definitely like talking more than we'd ever talk in a theater, right? If you thought people were in the theater, so so we go through the movie. Chloe's like doing all the commentary. Okay, great. Lights come up. It's over. We wait. There's Chloe's name in the credits. Yay! Applause. Yay! And then we stand up and we turn around, and there was actually one other person in the theater, just 2 rows behind us, and he had this look on his face that was just like, "You have totally ruined my movie-going experience." He didn't say anything. He was polite. He didn't say anything. But I think we all felt so bad at that point, and we were all like, "Oh, so sorry." Like, so sorry. It's her first film. It's her first film. Please, forgive us.
Yeah.
So it was, but my mind was blown. So I was really surprised. Well, actually, when she told me that they were running 4 cameras, I was like, wow. But then as we started to look at it, I think there were some kind of giveaways with the editing and with the lighting where you could kind of see, maybe not 4, but you could see that clearly this was a multicam shoot. So one of the questions I'm curious about, Chloe, is because first of all, it sounds like it was a wonderful experience. I mean, they didn't just like throw you in a corner and say, "Here, you're BTS." They actually let you be a part of the camera team, and not just shadow, but actually do work, which I think is really extraordinary. That had to have been a great experience. I'm jealous. I have to admit, I'm jealous. If I could have done that at your age, oh my gosh, I would have killed. But also, I mean, you were ready for the opportunity. You jumped, because that's a scary place to be, where okay, wait, but my school's important, my job's important, and you had to, with very little lead time, just drop it. So kudos to you, and for being supported too, because I think there's a lot of parents out there that would would worry in the same way that I would worry. I'm like too neurotic. I'd be like, "Oh man, I can't just leave. I can't just my school." Blah, blah. So it's really fantastic you got to take that experience, and this is where I'm living now vicariously through you. So, but one of the things I'm curious about. So now having done your thesis films at Chapman and kind of run the show the way that they're teaching you and want you to run the show, I'm curious. What are some comparisons, like when were there any things that when you were actually on the set in Montana that were radically different, maybe, or where it was like, "Oh wow, like this is not what I expected." I'm curious just what your experience there was.
I mean, the big obvious one is like, wow, everyone has their own area and they're doing their own thing. Like,
okay.
That was the biggest thing was, oh, I'm on camera team. Camera team has their own truck that's just camera. It's, this whole department is only based around the camera, where on a smaller set, it's kind of like, well, you have your camera team, but, we're all part of cinematography. Like, I rarely would talk to the grips or grip or electric,
Sure.
like, at all
on Outlaw Posse, right?
Outlaw
because
Posse, yeah,
everybody is much more specialized, and there's not movement between positions
no.
Usually, right?
Yeah, so that was super interesting. That was the first big thing. It was like, whoa, we're like literally our own little department that's only focused on camera. That's crazy. But I think the other thing is just like kind of how everything works. We're like, oh, crew holdings over here, but the trucks are over here, and you're gonna go to the crafty truck, which is an entire little RV that has all little fridges and all this stuff, and it's like our crafties just set up on a folding table normally with a bunch of more snacks. yeah But they would have like tea and they'd make you coffee, and it was like, whoa, this is insane. Or like when we were out on location, we were doing exteriors most of the time, or we're in Montana, so we're in the mountains or in the fields, and so we'd have our little our little carts and stuff that we would be taking back and forth from crew holding and carrying equipment or coffee or whatever. back and forth. And, oh, you need to run to the restroom? Well, you're going to have to take the ranger down there and drive it all the way down and stuff like that. So, it was like the scale of it was the biggest thing.
Sure.
I think, of course, that's pretty obvious. I don't know if anything else really shocked me. I guess the first week, we were getting new scripts sent out with the call sheet every day. Because
I think you were telling me it was being rewritten basically as you were shooting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was being written as we were shooting. So that was interesting and already like, I don't know if that's normal or if that's just this production. So
I'm imagining that Chapman was probably trying to steer you away from doing that. They were. I'm guessing. I'm gonna guess. I'll go out on a limb and say that maybe Chapman was suggesting that you have your script finalized
written
before you start shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't we all love that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's often, and I guess that's what I was kind of hinting at was that I was just kind of curious, like never having gone to film school myself, where they might be trying to teach kind of not an idealized way, but they're kind of maybe some of it is a little removed from the realities of the real
structured
world.
Way.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. It's a more structured way. They're trying to really get you into, hey, this is going to be the most efficient way that you can do this. But of course, in the real world, there are so many, as a student making a student film, you didn't have a studio or producers, you didn't have an executive producer threatening to pull money, or you didn't have people forcing you to make changes here, there, or whatever. Yeah.
I think one thing that's kind of neat too about like going from that transition of independent small sets to something as massive as that. I'm going to try and not break my NDA here, but I recently was on Guillermo del Toro's new movie, and I think that one of the interesting things there was just watching how the grips would, without even talking to the DP, go and set up a flag or put in a little fill light somewhere without even having to discuss it, and then if the DP noticed it and didn't like it, then it would be taken down, versus having to go up and have the DP walk around everywhere. And it's like the amount of trust between departments, and that it's so clear that whoever's being hired to do whatever role is trusted to make decisions on their own, and that it's not just like a hierarchy where the DP tells exactly what to do when and where. That there's a lot more trust in these, because they're professionals that are getting paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
So,
and that probably for Guillermo, I mean, I'm guessing he has a team that he probably
totally, it brings them everywhere.
A good percentage.
And so I think that was just one of those things that, like, just kind of like how you were speaking about the idea that that the crews are very you are like, if you're camera, you're working camera, and that's what that is. That's what you're hired in there to do. It is a funny transition to go from like indie sets where you're wearing 60 different hats and you're slating at one point, but then maybe you're going and setting up a dolly at another, and then you're setting up a light, and maybe even you're getting switching out a mic or something, right?
And there's pros and cons, like
there's
we
a
were
lot
just
of fun
talking,
to that too.
In our last episode, we were just talking to another filmmaker here, Benjamin Coppin, and he's got a new film coming out that's actually getting a theatrical release, and it's really exciting. And he came out from the Midwest, so he was kind of similar in a way, Chloe, to you. He grew up outside of this whole thing, moved to Southern California to pursue film, and he was kind of talking about how his experience at school, he didn't go to Chapman, but his experience in school was that, they did kind of start to teach you this siloed way of working where, hey, if you're doing this, you're doing that, you're not running around doing a lot of other stuff. And that for him, he felt that was a little bit limiting, because he produces and distributes his own films. And he's like, that way of working doesn't work for the way I want to be. I like to work with smaller crews, and I like it to be kind of this more communal experience. And I like to be able to have my hands in a lot of different areas. And I'd like my crew to be able to have that flexibility as well. So there's, some trade-offs. Sometimes it can get a little frustrating where everybody is so siloed. But I'm sure you're going to have experiences that are going to run the gamut, and it'll be exciting to follow those. So
I will mention really quick, one of the other, you reminded me that as doing like BTS and EPK stuff, there was occasionally times where I'd have to step away from the camera team and everything that was actually happening and, find a little spot somewhere else outside a set with the producer and, set up for an interview with one of the actors for the BTS and stuff like that. And I I did that a couple times and I was like, oh, we can make this work, we can make that work. And I was like, they gave me a little Canon C300. So I'd set that up. They didn't have the proper tripod for it. We had, O'Connor sticks, and it was there was no plate. There was no plate that was compatible. So it was like I'm literally just holding it on O'Connor sticks with the camera sitting on it, like so bad. And I'm like making it work because I'm used to like just making it work. Like with what I'm given, I'm making it work. Mm-hmm. And I do a few interviews. And at some point, Kurt comes over and talks, like, this is, like, days later. And he's like, oh, yeah, how's it been going with the EPK stuff? I'm like, it's great or whatever. And at one point, he comes and looks at what I've set up. He has a chance and he goes, oh, you should get a light in here. Like, you should, get something, like a bounce bore or something, just, like, get on the grip channel and have them bring something over. And I go, I can do that? Like, because there's this whole other department, and I'm like, I don't want to, they're working on the film. Like, that's what they should be focusing on right now. Like, I'm not going to bug them. I'm just me. I'm not going to go onto their channel and just be like, hey, can you bring me a little, like, a sky panel or something, like, I'm not going to do that. That's not my, I don't have that jurisdiction. And Kurt's like, no, like, don't make it flat. Like, you can use lights and stuff. And it just was this eye-opening moment of, wow, I can go and ask them to set something up for me, and I don't have to be my own little unit. I can actually go do that, which was kind of a wild experience. And then after that, I was doing that, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. I can just be like, hey, can I get a little light set up over here? I wouldn't have to tell them like what light. I was just like, yeah, I just need something to fill. And they'd be like, okay, and
they can anticipate.
Come over.
That's a great experience too.
So
then you're also getting that experience of making those calls and dealing with the logistics of that. Yeah.
So just watch eye-opening. This. So we'll just mark it here. So you'll remember this story, Chloe, in 20 years when you're up on stage, the Oscars, and you're winning your award for best cinematography, and you're like, well, even before that, you're going to be on set. And you'll have like, millions of dollars of budget, and there's going to be hundreds of people underneath, in your team. And you'll just be looking out at this, like you'll be shooting this epic shot, with like 1,000 extras. And you'll be like, I remember that one day where I got to call and ask for a light when I was doing BTS. And here I am now.
Yeah.
You'll remember it.
The moment it all changed.
Okay. Yeah. So as we kind of wind down here a little bit, I want to ask, and so since you were doing BTS, are there any like especially fun stories that you might have? Was there any kind of interaction with any of the like wonderful people, the cast that was a part of this film? Any fun little stories as we kind of wrap up here? A little gossip, maybe a little.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, I don't want to get you in trouble, of course.
No.
But...
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that happened on this set, and I didn't even touch on the fact that we were non-union and then we flipped to union halfway through. That was crazy.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of, the actors and stuff, it was so nice to meet all of them. And I wasn't the one asking the questions. The producer came and asked. Right. One of the producers, there was three. One of the producers came in and would ask the questions, stuff like that. But it was, man, like, they were so much fun. All of them were so great. I remember them just being so nice. And even, like, when we weren't actually doing BTS, they would then know me after I'd interviewed them because, I would stand there and I wasn't asking the questions, but I was on, I'd be like, oh, hey, you said, hey, I'm set up, here we go, stuff like that. And, miking them and everything like that. So they would come and find me occasionally and just be like, hey, how's it going? Stuff like that. And the one that did that the most was John Carroll Lynch. Bless his heart. He's one of the sweetest men I've ever met. He actually one day on set just showed up and during lunch brought a bunch of little individually wrapped dessert bars, Nanaimo bars, I think is what they're called.
Nanaimos,
Nanaimos, yeah, those. He made them. Like hundreds of them, individually wrapped with a sticker on top, and gave them to the entire cast and crew.
Wow.
So he is literally like the character that he played in Fargo.
Fargo,
he is that sweet.
I'm glad you said Fargo and not Zodiac.
That sweet, right?
Yes. Yes. He's incredible, and he would always be like, "Hey, how's it going? Like, what are you doing in school? Like, are you excited to go back?" And like, he was so genuinely
That's
nice to us,
really
and
wonderful.
I was like, "Wow, you made these? Like, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, I just, it wasn't even end of show. It was like middle of us film. He was just decided to make us all dessert bars. Like, that
It's a good
was,
lesson, and
yeah,
even for somebody who's been in the business for as long as he has, it's a good lesson.
Mm-hmm.
That a little bit of kindness and thoughtness,
thoughtfulness.
conscientiousness,
Yeah.
yeah, thoughtness. Yeah, that's a new word that I'm going to coin. Goes a really long way. I mean, because sets can be like, again, it's you never have enough time, you never have enough money, no matter how much time and money you have, and generally they can be very stressful. Very long days, as you know full well. I'm sure your days out there were 15 hours plus sometimes.
Yeah, we had an
And-
18-hour day. That was our
yeah.
longest.
And people get put, stretched pretty thin. And so that kind of stuff is a good lesson to learn, no matter what role you're in, to do things like that on set. Well, I unfortunately we're out of time. It almost feels like we need to have like a part two at some point, because I would love to hear more stories. I mean, the film, Flipping Union is interesting. I'm sure there are a lot of other stories, Chloe, that you could tell, but it's extremely exciting experience. And
Mm-hmm.
congratulations on your upcoming graduation. That's
Thank you.
fantastic, and you'll have to keep us posted on upcoming projects that you might have. And
I have something in the works right now that I was doing this morning, so.
Oh, nice,
okay.
nice.
All right. Well, when you can talk about it, we'll have to get back together. All right, Chloe. Well, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and thanks for sharing your experiences.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It was so much fun, and I'm so honored to have been a guest on your show. It's awesome.
All right, everyone. Well, we hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Chloe. We had a blast talking to her, and we wish her a wonderful beginning of her career here. She's graduating soon. How exciting. Reminds me of those wonderful days back in my youth when the future was oh so bright and it was all just laid out in front of you. Kind of like you, Colin. I mean, you're not, you're young. You've got that.
No, exactly.
You've got the youth thing too. That I'm like,
Yeah. The joy of it hasn't totally been beaten out of me yet.
the
So.
joy hasn't been exact. I know. I guess it's true. It's like the way I said that. It almost kind of sounds like yeah, I'm just a salty old fart. Ah. No, I still feel very young at heart. So don't worry, everyone. I'm not as cynical or salty as I'm making it out to be. But anyway, thanks for listening. We will look forward to catching up with you guys on our next episode. Until then.
Mm-hmm.